What often happens, though, is instinctively when those frictions happen, um, we learn to associate these blueprints with ourselves. It becomes our identity. And the challenge with it becoming our identity is we are no longer flexible. Like kids are flexible. That's why it's so easy to influence them. Um, they don't have that self-identity yet of who they are. They just are, and they're flexible, and you can influence them, and they can change, and they can adapt, and they can grow, and they love to learn and explore, and they have no problem with it. As adults, we already have a certain image of ourselves and how we are and who we are and certain things that we like and don't like to do. And it becomes a little more challenging. Now, naturally, the response when that friction comes up is to fight, to prove that you're right, to try to explain something to the other person about your position, and the other person doesn't understand you, so they try to explain something to you. And that constant back and forth creates two opposite rather than one whole. It puts us against each other rather in the same boat. And what we're trying to achieve always is to establish the one whole rather than getting into this ego trip of who's more important or who's right and who's wrong. And here we need practice. We don't need just practice, but we need support also, because there are crucial breaking points when a person just can't help himself, and he needs a group that also practices the same type of approach, and they believe in it and they want to give it their whole, and they support each other, that both couples in the relationship are now also getting the influence of a certain different environment, but towards the right way of approaching relationships. Now, what is this approach? This approach is talking, is getting to know each other, is it can take years, of learning what are the hot buttons for each other, what are the likes and dislikes, what are the dreams that we're looking forward to achieve in our family together, individually, how do we support each other. All of this requires time and effort and repetition and perseverance, and affirmation of the process, because at there's basically one scheme in the universe, which means in order to break to the next level of our relationship, and that's what nature does, right? It cannot stay still. There's no vacuum in nature. It has to be filled constantly. So there's either a negative or there is a positive, and the positive requires effort. The negative just happens by itself. It's just a general state where if it doesn't grow, it just begins to degrade. And the same with a relationship. Our relationship is designed in such a way that it constantly awakens those flaws between us that don't allow us to connect on a whole new level. So either we understand that process and begin the process, awaken this process, engage this process on our own, because we understand that if we don't, it's just going to be awakening us through a lot of challenges and issues and fights and everything else. Or we do it together. We do it on a regular basis where we sit down, we discuss some of the things that happened this week, some of the likes and dislikes, how it could have been, how it should have been, how I would like for you to react and not like for you to react. But rather than just, those are some of the things we talk about, but rather than just focusing on those behaviors, we also want to reinforce the goal of why are we together? What do we want to accomplish together? What are some of the things that in that perfect world, what are some of the things that me and you do towards each other that make it a perfect union, that make it a perfect connection between us, a perfect marriage? And every time when we reinforce them, we attract that future state of perfection as we see it at the moment. And it can evolve from day to day, from hour to hour, that level of understanding of what this ideal is. But as it evolves, we also evolve. So we change together, and this change happens much more harmonically and naturally, and in a good way, in a fun way, because then it becomes much more of a game than a battle, than a war. So this process becomes a part of our lives, and then we are naturally evolving along with it through the tough times and the good times. This process becomes one with us.